Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth-running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our last episode. And if you are unable to join me and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on my YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. And if you'd like to receive notifications on when our podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. Now let's learn a little bit about our guest today. Kelly Falardeau is a burn survivor from the age of 2 on 75% of her body. She found a way to go from near death to success, from the ugly Scarface girl to the TEDx stage twice. Fierce Woman of the Year, a 7-time international bestselling author, recipient of the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee Medal and YWCA Woman of Distinction. A documentary about her life called Still Beautiful launched on TV. Plus, Goldcast launched a video that has over 10 million views. Now she's a full-time best-selling author strategist, coaching people to become best-selling authors. In 2021, she was nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year. So Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Candy. It's so great to be here with you.
Well, I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have. I know this is going to be a very compelling topic. But my first question for guests is always just tell me a little bit more about yourself and how did you begin working with entrepreneurs? And I know you have a little bit of a story in there to tell.
Yeah, you bet. So, just like my bio said, I got burnt when I was 2 years old, and I never ever thought that, I'd have a good life, right? I grew up believing that I was the ugly girl, and I never thought I'd ever get married or have kids or be successful. And it wasn't until about 12 years ago that I went to an event with, it was a women's networking event. And I met this lady there, and her name is Charmaine Hammond. And Charmaine said to me, Kelly, you need to sell that business you're in and be a speaker. And I said, what? I'm a burn survivor. So what? And she's like, no, people will be so inspired by your story. Now, at that time, I had a different business. I had a scrapbooking business. And she saw a message in me that I didn't see. And when she said to me, you need, people be inspired by your story, I'm like, I don't get it. Because at that point in my life, me and my husband were almost bankrupt. And, I was in a toxic marriage, and my business was failing. And I also had a job because my husband had been laid off. And so I had to go to work full time, and we had, twin boys and a daughter. And, I just didn't see myself as being inspirational at all. I saw myself as being a loser. And so it was kind of interesting when she said, no, people will be inspired by you. And I'm thinking, by what? Because I'm a loser. So anyway, so she found a way to get her and I on a professional stage. And so we did an Ellen show. And so she was like the Ellen and I was the guest. And, that was the start of it. And I ended up taking a course from a lady who was teaching women how to become keynote speakers. And I didn't have the money at the time. Like, I couldn't afford it. We were almost bankrupt. And so she said, well, that's no problem. I'll take payments. And that was the start of my journey. And then after I took that course, she told me, by the way, you now need to be an author. And I'm like, I don't know how to write a book, right? I'm thinking Stephen King and J.K. Rowling that take years to write books, right? And she's like, no, you need to write a book so that when people ask you to speak for free, you've got a product to sell. Also, so that you will get more credibility as a speaker if you have a book. And then the third reason is also because then you can charge higher fees, right? Once you got that credibility of being an author or even a best-selling author, your fees go up. So she said there's all these strategic entrepreneurial reasons why you should be a best-selling author. So that was the start of my journey.
Well, and there's so many things that you shared in there that I love. I mean, the first thing is that somebody saw something in you that you didn't even see in yourself and encouraged you to go forward. And I think we all need that as entrepreneurs. I think sometimes we doubt ourselves, especially if we're stepping out of our comfort zone. So I love that you're encouraged, first of all, just to tell your story and to realize that stories are inspirational. I've heard the comment before, your mess is your message, right? A lot of people have heard that. And so a lot of people, I think, would really gravitate to your story because it makes sense to them, right? And they can see themselves, even if they're not a burn victim per se. It's, I've had struggles and I need to overcome them, so I love that part of your story. So I would love for you then to even talk about, as somebody who has a story, maybe they're starting to recognize it now, just listening to you, like, yes, I have something I want to share. How do they even go about getting on a stage or putting it into a story that they can share in a book? Like, what are the tips that you have to share with the entrepreneur who's listening today?
Oh my God. One of the biggest tips is to not quit. Right? So many times we want to quit when things aren't going well. And I find that sometimes your obstacles are not to challenge you to see how high you're going to go, but it's like, this is the wrong direction. You need to go this direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that a lot of times it's just too easy to quit. And we need to keep going after our dreams and our goals. The other thing is to get a mentor involved.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget when, he's not my husband anymore, but when I was married and when I told him I wanted to be a speaker, he said to me, well, who's going to listen to you?
Mm.
Right. And he was telling me, well, speakers don't make any money and, you don't have much of a story and you're not successful. Why would anybody want to listen to you? And at that time, I understand it because we were in a really rough spot of my life
Mm-hmm.
when we were, going through all this. But then what happened was I got on stage and I was like, it was amazing. Like the feeling I had was just absolutely incredible. And so I ended up talking to this guy on Facebook, and his name is Jack. And so I was telling him how amazing I felt when I did it. And I've never had this feeling before in any other job that I did. And he said, Kelly, that's your passion.
Mm-hmm.
That's your core desire. You have to do it. Like, just find a way. Don't listen to the people who are telling you can't do it. Listen to us. Like, get a mentor that's in the speaking world who can help you. And so I really believe that the second thing is to get a mentor or
Mm-hmm.
a champion or a coach, someone that's going to like lead you along the way. And it makes sense to have somebody that's in your business. For example, you don't want to have your accountant teaching you how to be a speaker or how to write a book because they don't know how to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to get somebody that's doing what you want to do. And people love being asked to be mentors. They love
Mm-hmm.
it, right?
That's so
And
true.
so those are a couple of the tips that I want to share with entrepreneurs. I think the third thing is, I think what was really bothering me in the beginning is that, I would go to different mastermind groups and people would say to me, you should be making more money. Right? I don't know if you've heard that before, but people would be saying that to me. You should be making more money, or you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And what I found is that a lot of their methods weren't in integrity with how I like to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found that really difficult for me is people were trying to teach me their ways, but they just didn't fit with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's something that you have to do is make sure that the way you're doing business is in integrity with who you are and what you like to do.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that 100% too. And I actually had
And
a guest recently talking about that too, where often you're going to see, somebody saying, you can do XYZ and it's way advanced compared to where you are and what you need. And so finding the right person for you is so important, right? You might see someone out there that's a mentor that you're thinking, okay, I want to be at that level. But maybe that's too far along the path. You need to just start where you are and take that first baby step. So I agree with you, finding the right mentor and actually one that aligns with your belief system as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is so important. And sometimes too, like I don't know how to say this without offending anybody, but sometimes it depends on like when you're a woman, sometimes it's better to have a woman mentor, but sometimes it's also better to have a man mentor,
Mhm,
right? And I know that that's something that was happening for me a couple years ago is that my coaches were men and they do things a different way than
mhm,
women, right? And I was like, okay, I don't think I need a male coach anymore. I think I need a female coach now, right?
right.
And so then it's like, what do you need that's gonna be in alignment with you to
Mhm,
help you get where you want to go?
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you are going to tell someone again about making their story into something that they can present easily, like what
Yeah.
would you say about how to turn that story? Like they might have the ideas swirling in their head, but they're not sure how to put it down on paper for a book or to create it for a presentation. Like what would you say?
Okay. So the biggest thing that I tell all of my clients and any of the workshops that I do is imagine that person or the reader that you want to help. Imagine them sitting in front of you. What are 10 things you'd want to tell them?
Mhm,
And that is the start of your chapter. Or it could be the start of your speech. It could be the start of anything and your workshop.
mhm,
So, for example, we were writing a book called 1000 Tips for Teenagers. So, my co author at the time said, well, we don't know 1000 tips. Like, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to do that? And I said, no, but we do know 100 people who could submit 10 tips.
mhm,
And so that's what I would do is I would imagine a teenager sitting in front of me and I would say, okay, what are 10 things I want to tell them? Another time I had to do a speech to a group of burn survivors. And there was I think it was 200 burn survivors in the room. And so what I did is I said, okay, because I got burned as a 2-year-old, but there's going to be a lot of people who just got burnt a year or 5 years ago. So what are 10 things I'd want to tell them? And
mhm,
so those 10 things became my speech. They could also become a book or a workshop. But those 10 things, it was like, oh, yeah, I'd want to tell them this. I'd want to tell them this. I'd want to tell them this. And then you can break that down into little stories for each one of those 10 things. And maybe it's
mhm,
more than 10, but I always advise people start with 10.
mhm. So your story was turned into a documentary we heard in your bio. So I would love to find out like how did that even happen?
Oh my God, that's a cool story. I love that story. Well, so here's what happened is Wayne Dyer was one of my favorite authors. And I said to myself, in the universe, I'd love to meet Wayne Dyer. And so up popped up on Facebook this conference that Hay House was putting on. And the conference, who was the speaker? Wayne Dyer. And at the time, I didn't have the money. I was like, okay, fine, I get it. This is the conference. I'm supposed to go to it. Show me the money. So sure enough, the next day or a couple days later, I got some checks in the mail, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy!" And then my credit card company, they upped my limit, and I was like, "Okay, I get it. I'm supposed to go to this." So I go to that conference, and that conference was all about how to write a book proposal, and they were having a contest. And the contest, you could win a publishing contract with Hay House. And so I thought, okay, so I did the book proposal. I didn't win the contest, but then I said to myself, okay, why else was I supposed to write this book proposal? Tell me what else. And I heard that voice say, email Brian. Now, Brian works for a broadcaster here in Canada. And so I emailed Brian. I said, Brian, I've written a book proposal. I'm being encouraged to make a documentary out of it. I don't know if this is something you're interested in, but maybe you are, maybe you aren't. So he said, yeah, send it over. So sure enough, he said, okay, are you interested in producing a documentary by yourself? Because I've done them before. Or would you like to co-produce it with us and then we will put money into the pot? And I was like, of course, I want the money, right?
Mhm,
So that was the start of it. They then found a production company that they wanted to work with, and they wrote a script about my life story and followed me around for about 6 weeks. We even went down to San Francisco where they filmed me speaking to a group of women, and they recreated my accident of me getting burned as a 2-year-old and some hospital scenes and all kinds of like school scenes. And then they follow me right up to speaking to a group of 3,000 teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, they filmed all that. And so it aired in Canada, all across Canada. And now we're trying to branch it out and get it down into the US and outside of, Canada and the US. So that was how my documentary got made. It was just one of those things. You know how it is when you know it's the right thing to do, everything just falls into place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happened with this.
Right. Well, that to me also tells the story of listening to your inner voice. You might be doubting yourself, but if you have something encouraging you to do something, step out and take that chance. What's the worst that can happen? Right.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. So many times we hear that little whisper of our heart, but we don't act on it.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's our soul speaking to us and saying, hey, have you thought of this or have you thought of that? And so when I heard that little voice say to me, email Brian, I was like, okay, and did it. And sure enough, it led to the documentary being made and produced and on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, absolutely. You got to listen to that little whisper of your heart.
Right. Well, and I know the topic title that we were going to name this was Ugly is Always Beautiful, right? And someone may, be hearing that and saying, well, I'm not sure what you mean. Like, I would love for you to just tell from your perspective to encourage others who may be struggling, whether it's a physical challenge they have or other things, what you've learned and how you realize that you're not ugly, you're beautiful, and share that story.
Sure. So I remember one day we went to a garage sale, and it was me and my former husband. We were driving around, and we go to this garage sale, and I walk in, and I'm looking around at things, and this lady says to me, "They couldn't do better than that."
Mm.
Oh, and I was like, hit me right here, right to my core. I was so mad. I was so hurt and upset. And I thought, you know what? This lady doesn't know that I got burnt as a 2-year-old. She doesn't know I had surgeries every 2 years till I was 20. She doesn't know what I've been through. And
Mm-hmm.
yet I'm letting a complete stranger take my power away. And I thought, why am I doing this? Why am I letting this stranger take my power away? And I thought, not once have my kids or my family or friends ever said, Cal, I would love you more if you were scarlet. And yet here I am letting a stranger take my power away. And so I looked at her and I said, you know what? I happen to think I look pretty good. And I turned around and I walked away. And I thought, why are we like this? Like, why are we so stuck on what everybody thinks of us?
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, so fast forward a few years, um, I wanted to do a TEDx talk. That was on my bucket list of things to do as a speaker. And so the theme of this TEDx event was unprovable or unsolvable problems. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. And I thought, people are always making acronyms out of words.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, why couldn't ugly be an acronym? And I thought, okay, let's figure this out. So I'm going through words, and I come to the U and I think unique. Yeah, we're all unique,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I thought the G stands for gorgeous, right? We're all gorgeous, right? But a lot of times what happens is we compare ourselves to other people, and the more
Mm-hmm.
we compare ourselves, the more we diminish who we are. And so I thought we have to stop comparing ourselves to other women, and then we will feel how gorgeous we are. The L stands for lovable, and we are all lovable and we are loved. But what happens is we don't get told enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so because we don't hear it enough, we don't feel like people love us. And so we are all lovable. And then, of course, the Y stands for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the unique, gorgeous, lovable you
Mm-hmm.
is always beautiful.
I
And
love
so,
that.
Yeah, and it became my TEDx talk. And then what I did is I proved, when we watch Snow White, we see the evil queen talking to the mirror.
Mhm,
And so we're learning at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old that the mirror talks to us.
mhm,
And so when we look in the mirror and we say, yuck, look how ugly I am today, we think it's the mirror that's telling us, yeah, are you ever ugly? But it's not. It's our own voices in our head, and we can control those thoughts.
mhm,
So instead of looking in the mirror and saying how ugly you are, you have to say something positive. And so what I did is, instead of saying I am beautiful, because that's what I would do, people would say to me, well, Kel, just go in the mirror and say I am beautiful a million times, and eventually you'll believe it. Well, that doesn't work for me.
mhm,
So I changed, and I went to the mirror and I said, I love my big, beautiful green eyes.
mhm,
And sure enough, that negative voice didn't say nothing, because I believe it. I believe I have big, beautiful green eyes. And then I looked at my nose and I said, I happen to love my cute little nose.
mhm,
Again, I didn't hear the voice. And then I looked at my ear, and my ear is deformed. It's not a normal ear. And I thought, I love my little ear. It makes me special. It makes me
mhm,
unique. It makes me different. Right. And I wasn't bragging about myself. I was learning to embrace myself. So then every time I went into the mirror after that, instead of seeing my ugly scars, I saw the things that I love about me. And
mhm,
that's what ugly is all about. It's all about quit looking in the mirror and saying, I am beautiful. Because if you don't believe it, it doesn't matter how many times you say it, you're not going to believe it. But if you
mhm,
believe you have big, beautiful green eyes, or you have a big smile, and that's what's going to make you love yourself more.
mhm. I
So,
think that's so important too, because I think most of us, if not all, will find something about ourselves that we don't like. Where if you can then just say, like you said, I like this about me, or it doesn't even have to be physical, right? Like, I love that I'm a loyal person, right? I love that I care about other people, things like that, that can encourage us as well. Because otherwise we will focus on, if we're looking in the mirror, right? We look at those few things we don't like instead of the things that we do. So I love that you're talking about that too, is just look at yourself and say something that you do like about yourself and build your confidence that way too.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Usually, when we look in the mirror, we're picking out everything we hate about ourselves because we don't look very good in the morning. you know, our hair is all messed up and we're not quite awake. And yet we judge ourselves when we're not awake and we're not feeling our best. But
Hmm.
don't go judging yourself first thing in the morning. Wait till you feel like you're presentable and you feel more alive. Then go judge yourself in the mirror. Right.
Right.
But
Hmm.
pick out the things you love about you instead of picking on the things you hate about yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, while you were talking earlier too, one other thing that popped in my head is, I remember I had a business coach at one point that was talking about how she had an idea of something she wanted to do. It was before she actually had a coaching business. She was leaving a corporate type job and was going to start something. And when she was talking about it with her friends, one person said, "Oh, you'll never make money at that. Nobody's going to pay for that." Right. And this coach was a bit downhearted because she was thinking, like, well, I thought I had this great idea. And her husband said, "Is that somebody that you would want to take advice from?" Right. And
Oh, that's a great question.
yeah. And she said, "No, actually, it's not." Right. And so her husband encouraged her to find those around her that would encourage her, that believed in her dreams. And so, like you were saying before, too, where someone doesn't know your story, they're judging you, you're letting her take your power away by a comment that she made. Is just look at the people around you and who can you have as an encouragement to help you meet your dreams, right? Because we all need to have someone to really help us. I mean, we could probably do it on our own, but it's much easier when you have someone
Yes.
in your corner, like cheering you on.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. You have to have people in your life that have your best interest, like
Hmm.
at heart, right? A lot of times people, it's because they're the ones that are scared for you, so then they project that onto you.
Hmm.
And that's not right, because
Right.
right, like you
Hmm.
have your own dreams and your own goals, and That's actually one of the reasons I'm not with my husband anymore, is because he saw the world as full of doom and gloom, and I saw the world as full of possibilities. So you want to be with somebody or have coaches or mentors that see your world as full of possibilities, not as full of doom and gloom.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Well, I love this conversation that we've been having. I love hearing like your story and how you were able to turn it into a presentation, right? Turning it into a book, a documentary, and sharing those tips with those who are listening, So I would like to ask if you have an offer, that you would like to share with our listeners.
sure. So yeah, I definitely have a free gift for your listeners, because that is one of my things, is helping people to take their story and make a book out of it. And I believe every entrepreneur should have a book, because it's going to take you to a whole different level. And but yeah, so I have a blueprint on how to write a book in 7 easy steps. And so they can just go to www.7stepsauthor.com, and that's where they can download that blueprint.
Perfect. And do you want to share any other way that they can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to my speaker website, which is kellyfalardeau.com. That's another spot where you can go and you can see my TEDx talk there. There's a Goalcast video that has over 10 million views, and yeah, I can check that out too. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Well, thank you, Kelly, for being a guest on my show, sharing your story and also tips for the entrepreneur to learn what they can do to put their story into a book or a talk or even a TEDx presentation. So I really appreciate your time.
You are very, very welcome. Thank you so much.
And I also want to thank you, the listener. I'm so thankful that you were tuning in today, and I hope you found this topic interesting and that answered some questions regarding ugly is always beautiful. Again, if you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to Kelly at the information that she shared or send us a message at media@abandp.com. I hope you can join me for my next interview. And please remember, you can connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. You can also find the podcast posted on multiple favorite podcast platforms, including iTunes, TuneIn, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And would you please share our show with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? I'd really appreciate your support. Thanks so much and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.